The first thing you notice about the blue whale is the mouth. It is a cavern of baleen, a curtain of stiff, dark plates hanging from the upper jaw, like the slats of a vast ancient blind. Each plate is heavy, fringed at the edge, and together they form a filter that can strain the ocean itself. Within that mouth, a tongue rests, thick as a small car and dark as wet slate. It weighs as much as an adult elephant. It is a muscle, built for one purpose, to push a colossal gulp of seawater forward, forcing it through those fringed plates, until only what is too big to pass remains trapped and sliding down the throat. What remains more often than not is a creature no longer than a human thumb, a drifting, shrimp-like speck that gathers by the billions in the cold green water. The krill, the largest animal ever to have lived on Earth, a leviathan that can reach 100 feet and weigh over 150 tons, feeds almost entirely on this tiny, translucent crustacean. And it is not alone in this strange dependence. The biggest bodies in the ocean, the swiftest tuna, the most far-traveling sharks, the crowded colonies of seabirds, all of them are anchored to these small, silver, shimmering schools of life. We tend to think that power means independence. Yet here, in the blue, size demands the deepest dependence. In 2011, the Pew Charitable Trusts published a fact sheet that summed it up with a simple, almost startling title. They called it the most important little fish in the sea. Inside, they wrote that forage fish provide a critical link between plankton at the bottom of the food web and predators at the top. It was a quiet declaration of an enormous truth. The water here is cold and the light fades fast. Below the swell, the blue whale glides, a shadow that moves with a slowness that feels eternal. There is no rush in its strokes, only a deep, patient rhythm, the fluke rising and falling like a slow heartbeat pushing it through the deep. Around it, the water is thick with life that is almost invisible. Diatoms drift, copepods twist, and tiny shrimp-like creatures pulse their legs, forming a living soup that stretches for miles. This is the posture of the giants, a field of drifting energy that the whale will soon harvest with a single, enormous yawn of its jaws. The baleen plates in its mouth, stiff as broom bristles and curved inward, can filter out a single krill, no longer than a grain of rice. It does not chase. It does not hunt. It simply opens its mouth and swims forward, a moving sieve, taking in everything the water holds, holding the food and letting the sea pour back out. In these feeding grounds, the whale will consume up to 40 million krill in a single day. 40 million individuals, each one almost weightless, to fuel a body that weighs more than a fully loaded 747. It is a mathematics that feels impossible, a ratio of size so vast that the mind struggles to hold it. Oceana, in their 2011 report on these marine food webs, listed the species that fill this role. They named the Pacific herring, the Pacific sardine, the northern anchovy, the smelts, the squid, and the krill. These are the small ones, the forage fish, the creatures that exist in the space between the microscopic and the magnificent. A 2010 study published in Progress in Oceanography, led by Andrew Bakken and his colleagues, analyzed this arrangement. They found that these forage fish are not just part of the ecosystem, they are a central component, essential to the persistence of the predators that depend on them. Remove that central piece, and the entire structure leans then falls. The whale holds its breath and turns. It has sensed a change in the water, a shift in density, a thickening of the living soup. It angles its huge head downward, and for the first time, there is a purpose in its movement. The gentle giant is about to become a predator of the infinitesimal. We often think power means independence, yet here, in this cold and fading light, size demands the deepest dependence. The blue whale, the largest creature that has ever existed, cannot survive without a creature that would fit comfortably on a thumbnail. This is the mystery we are following, the quiet secret at the heart of the ocean. It has been a long migration. The whale has traveled thousands of miles from its tropical breeding grounds, where the water is warm and the food is scarce. It has come here to the cold, productive waters of the feeding latitudes, driven by a hunger that has been building for months. For a nursing mother, the stakes are even higher. She needs millions of calories each day, not just to fuel her own vast body, but to produce the thick, fatty milk that will sustain her calf. A single lost feeding season is not a small inconvenience. It is a matter of life and death for the next generation. Her calf, a youngster of perhaps 20 feet and several tons, swims close to her side. It is learning. It watches as its mother's throat grooves expand, the pleated skin of her belly ballooning outward like a great white accordion. It is watching how she feeds, how she finds the invisible clouds of food that sustain them both. And this is what we must understand.
This is the mechanism that we are about to see unfold, the partnership that powers the largest bodies in the sea. It is not a friendship. It is not a conscious alliance. It is a brutal, beautiful necessity, written into the very structure of life in the ocean. The connection between the ocean's most massive creatures and its smallest is not a simple story of eating and being eaten.
It is an energy bridge, a conduit that carries the power of the sun, captured by microscopic plants, up through the krill and into the bodies of giants. Without that bridge, the entire structure collapses. In 2014, a major review, published in the journal Fish and Fisheries, led by Ellen Pickich, described these forage fish in a phrase that has become famous among marine biologists. They called them the ecological bread and butter of the marine food chain.
It is a homespun phrase for a system of staggering importance. So here is the central question that hangs in the water, a question as vast and as deep as the ocean itself. How does a creature this massive depend entirely on something so frail? How does a 200-ton animal, a being of bone and muscle and ancient instinct, survive on a diet of creatures that would be crushed between your fingers? The answer, as we will see, lies not in the size of the individual, but in the immense power of the collective. The krill are small, but they are not weak. They are abundant. They are everywhere, in numbers so vast that they defy comprehension. And this abundance is the key to everything. That image of a 200-ton life resting entirely on a cloud of tiny, drifting creatures. It is one I carry with me every time I look at the sea. If this kind of story settles in your mind and asks you to stay, then I invite you to subscribe. We will keep walking through these hidden partnerships, one quiet observation at a time. When you heard the phrase, ecological bread and butter, what single word surfaced for you? Leave it in the comments. I read every one. The blue whale dives and the water closes over its back. The light dims, the pressure rises, and the Leviathan descends into a world of cold and darkness. It is following a scent, a chemical trail left by billions of tiny creatures. A signal that says, here is the feast. Its heart slows. Its blood is redirected to its brain and its core. It is conserving oxygen, preparing for a long, deep dive. It is a body built for efficiency, a machine that has been millions of years in the making, and it is about to demonstrate its purpose. As it descends, the water around it begins to change. It becomes milky, thick with a living shimmer. The krill are here, a great swirling mass of them, a cloud of life so dense that it stains the water a deep, rusty red. It is the color of a harvest, and the whale has arrived for the gathering. It opens its mouth. The water rushes in, a torrent that carries with it a ton of krill. The throat grooves expand, the belly balloons, and the whale takes in a volume of water greater than its own body weight. It is the single largest feeding event in the natural world. A gulp that would fill a small room. The water closes over the whale's back, and for a moment, the surface is empty. Then the fluke rises, a dark blade against the pale sky, and slips beneath the waves without a sound. The krill cloud, disturbed by the passage, begins to reform, a living current that knows no memory of the great body that passed through it. This is the rhythm of the cold seas. A lunge, a swallow, a slow drift upward for air.
The whale feeds and rests, feeds and rests. Each cycle, drawing from the ocean the energy it needs to sustain a heart the size of a small car, a heart that beats just 6 times a minute when the animal dives deep. The calf watches and learns. It mimics its mother's movements, though its own throat grooves are still shallow, its own baleen still soft. Every lunge is a lesson, every swallow a step toward the day it will feed alone. But that day is far off. For now, it stays close. A shadow beside a shadow. 2 vast bodies moving through a world of tiny things. There is a studied patience to this feeding. The whale does not thrash. It does not chase. It simply opens its mouth and swims forward, taking in the water and the life within it, then closes its jaws and pushes the sea back out through the baleen. The krill are trapped, a living harvest that slides down the throat in a single practiced motion. This is not a hunt in the way we usually imagine. There is no pursuit, no struggle, no final, desperate burst of speed. It is more like breathing, a constant, rhythmic taking in of the world. And yet it is the most efficient predation on Earth, a system that converts the ocean's smallest creatures into the ocean's largest bodies with an elegance that borders on the sublime. The numbers are almost impossible to hold in the mind. A single blue whale can consume 40 million krill in a day. 40 million. Each one, a tiny, translucent creature, each one carrying a small charge of energy, and together, forming a feast that can power a leviathan across an entire ocean. And the krill themselves are not passive victims. They are a species built for this, their bodies designed to be consumed. They reproduce in such vast numbers that they can sustain the loss of billions, their populations rising and falling with the seasons, always returning, always replenishing.
It is a system of giving and taking that has been running for millions of years, but this system is not without its fragile points. A 2000 study in the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences, led by Philippe Coury and his colleagues, found that marine predators depend heavily on just a few forage fish species. The dependence is not spread thin across many options. It is concentrated, focused, and therefore vulnerable. When those few species decline, the predators have nowhere else to turn. They cannot simply switch to another food source because there is no other food source abundant enough to sustain them. The ecosystem, built on a foundation of a few small species, begins to lean and then to fall. This is the hidden architecture of the ocean. It is not a pyramid of big eating small, with each level supported by the one below. It is a column, a single, narrow pillar of small creatures, holding up the entire weight of the ocean's megafauna. Knock out that pillar, and everything above it comes down. The whale surfaces, and a plume of mist rises from its blowhole, a great white exhalation that hangs in the cold air for a moment before dissipating. It is a sound like a steam engine, a deep, resonant breath that carries across the water for miles. The calf surfaces beside it, a smaller plume, a younger breath. In the distance, the sky is growing pale, the light is shifting, and the water begins to take on a different quality. A colder, more metallic sheen. The feeding grounds are changing, and the whale can sense it. The krill are beginning to move, to spread out, to descend to deeper, darker waters, where the cold is more even and the food more scarce. The season is turning. The whale has been feeding for months, building the thick layer of blubber that will sustain it through the long migration back to the warm waters where it will breed. But it is not done yet. It needs more, always more, because the journey ahead is long and the caloric demands are immense. This is the constant, gnawing hunger of the largest animal on Earth. It is a hunger that can never be fully satisfied, only temporarily appeased. The whale must feed almost continuously, taking in millions of calories each day just to maintain its vast, warm-blooded body. And yet, even in this constant feeding, there is a remarkable efficiency. The whale has evolved to extract every possible joule of energy from the tiny creatures it consumes. Its intestines are long, its digestion is slow, and its blubber is a perfect insulator, storing energy for the long, lean months ahead. The calf, still nursing, is growing at an astonishing rate.
It gains 200 pounds a day, fueled by the rich fatty milk its mother produces. It is a living testament to the energy that flows through the ocean, from the sun to the plankton to the krill to the whale, a chain of life that stretches across the entire blue world. But the ocean is not a constant. It is a place of cycles and shifts, of upwellings and downwellings, of currents that carry nutrients and currents that carry nothing. The krill are not evenly distributed. They gather where the food is, where the plankton bloom, where the water is rich with the microscopic life that sustains them. These are the upwelling zones, the places where cold, nutrient-rich water rises from the depths to meet the sunlit surface. Here, the plankton explode in numbers, and the krill gather by the billions to feast. And here, the whales come, drawn by a scent that travels across the ocean, a signal of abundance that they have followed for millions of years. From the coast of California to the icy waters of the Antarctic, these upwelling zones are the pastures of the sea. They are the places where the ocean's smallest creatures gather in their greatest numbers, and where the ocean's largest creatures come to feed. It is a geography of abundance, mapped by hunger and driven by the invisible currents of the deep. The whale has been following this geography for weeks. It has crossed entire ocean basins, navigating by a combination of memory, instinct, and a sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field that scientists are only beginning to understand. It has found its way to this particular patch of ocean, this particular cloud of krill, with a precision that seems almost supernatural. And now the season is turning. The krill are beginning to disperse, to descend to deeper waters, to enter a phase of their life cycle where they are less abundant, less concentrated. The whale must decide, continue feeding here where the food is thinning, krill to wherever they've gone. It is a decision that carries enormous weight. A wrong choice could mean a leaner migration, a thinner blubber layer, a harder winter. For a nursing mother, it could mean the difference between her calf's survival and its death. The whale circles, its huge head turning, its eyes scanning the water for a sign. There is a hesitation in its movements, a pause that feels almost human. It has been feeding here for weeks, and it knows this patch of ocean intimately. It knows where the krill gather, where the current runs, where the water is warmest. But it also knows that the food is leaving, and that it must follow. In that pause, there is something almost recognizable, a weight we have all felt. If you want to stay with these quiet, life-turning moments, subscribe and follow where the migration leads. What do you think the whale was listening for in that silence? Leave your word below. The calf swims close, pressing against its mother's side. It is hungry, but it is also patient, learning the rhythms of its mother's body, the timing of her dives, the pace of her feeding. It will follow her wherever she goes, trusting in a knowledge that is older than memory. And so, the whale turns. It angles its head to the south, toward a region of the ocean where the water is colder, the currents are stronger, and the krill are more abundant. It begins to swim, a slow, steady stroke that will carry it hundreds of miles over the coming days. This is the great, ongoing migration of the largest animals on Earth, a movement that has been repeating for millions of years. It is a journey driven by hunger, guided by memory, and sustained by the tiny creatures that fill the ocean's cold green waters. But the journey is not without its risks. The ocean is vast, and the krill are not always where they are expected to be. A shift in the currents, a change in the temperature, a disruption in the plankton bloom, and the whole system can falter. The whale may arrive at its destination only to find an empty sea. It is a risk that the whale has evolved to manage, but it is a risk nonetheless. And in recent years, that risk has been growing. The waters are warming, the currents are shifting, and the krill are moving, sometimes to places where the whales cannot easily follow. The ocean is changing, and the giants that depend on its smallest creatures are feeling the change. It is a slow, subtle shift, invisible to the casual eye, but profound in its consequences. The blue whale, the largest animal that has ever lived, is now facing a future more uncertain than at any point in its long history. We tend to see the ocean as a place of abundance, a vast and inexhaustible pantry that will always provide. And for the blue whale, for millions of years, it has. But this abundance is not a constant. It is a delicate bloom, a seasonal explosion of life that depends on a precise balance of light, temperature, and chemistry. When that balance tips, the bloom fails and the pasture goes empty. Scientists studying these systems have documented what happens when the forage fish population collapses. In 2000, a study published in the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences, led by Philippe Curie and his colleagues, sounded a clear warning. They found that marine predators depend heavily on just a few forage fish species, making the entire ecosystem vulnerable when those prey populations decline. It is a dependence that cannot be easily replaced. The false claim that big ocean predators mainly depend on large prey is one that the evidence simply does not support. The Pew Charitable Trust's 2011 fact sheet were explicit on this point. Whales, seabirds, tuna, and salmon all rely on forage fish as a primary source of food. Even the largest filter feeders, the ones that seem to strain the ocean itself, are sustained by the smallest of creatures. Other fish do not fill this role. A tuna, massive and swift, cannot turn to a diet of other large fish. The energy cost of chasing them is too high, and the abundance is too low. A seabird cannot dive for a meal that is scattered and rare. It needs the dense, shimmering masses of the forage fish, the bait balls that concentrate the ocean's energy into a single, reachable target. When those bait balls fail to form, the effect ripples up the food web. The seabirds that nested along the cliffs find their chicks starving. The tuna that migrated thousands of miles find no payoff at the end of the journey. The whales, the great filter feeders, travel farther and dive deeper, searching for a food source that has simply moved on or faded away. This is the hidden fragility of the ocean. The system that seems so vast and so powerful is, in fact, built on a foundation of a few small species. And when those species falter, the entire structure leans. The predators do not easily switch to another food source because there is no other food source with the necessary abundance and energy density. Oceana, in their 2011 report on this very subject, noted this low redundancy. They observed that in many systems, only a few species fill the forage role. There is no backup plan. If the Pacific sardine population crashes, the predators do not simply turn to another fish. They go hungry, their breeding fails, and their numbers begin to thin. It is a stark picture, a reminder that the ocean's great diversity is not evenly distributed. It is concentrated in a few key species, a few critical links that hold the entire web together. And this concentration is both the system's strength and its greatest vulnerability. The whale, of course, does not think in these terms. It does not understand the concept of a food web or a trophic cascade. It only knows the hunger, the gnawing, constant need that drives it across the ocean. It knows that the water is changing, that the krill are thinning, that the signs it has followed for generations are growing fainter and less reliable. But the whale is not without resources. It has memory, passed down from mother to calf, a living map of the ocean's feeding grounds. It has instinct, a deep ancestral knowledge of where the food should be. And it has a remarkable ability to adapt, to find new pastures when the old ones fail. The calf, still young, is learning this map. It is memorizing the routes, the smells, the sounds that will guide it through its long life. It is watching its mother, studying her every move, building its own internal compass from her example. The knowledge is precious, but it is also fragile, passed from one generation to the next in an unbroken chain of observation and trust. In the cold, green water, the whale begins its journey south. It does not know the destination with certainty. It only knows that the food is moving, and it must follow. The fluke rises and falls, a steady, patient rhythm that will carry it across hundreds of miles of open ocean. The calf stays close, a shadow beside a shadow. Two vast bodies moving through a world of tiny things. The water changes as they travel. The temperature drops, the color deepens, and the life becomes more concentrated. The signs of abundance are everywhere, in the streaks of green, in the swarms of copepods, in the distant flicker of a seabird's wing. The whale is on the right path, and it knows it. But even here, in this rich, sea water, there is no guarantee. The krill may be here, or they may have moved on. A single storm, a single shift in the current, can scatter a bloom that took weeks to build. The whale that feeds with a sense of eternal patience also feeds with an edge of uncertainty, a knowledge that the ocean does not promise anything. It is this uncertainty, this delicate balance, that makes the ocean's greatest spectacle so moving. The largest animal on Earth, a being of bone and muscle and ancient instinct, is at the mercy of a creature it will never see, a shrimp-like speck that is both its prey and its salvation. It is a dependence so total that it is almost sublime. And so, the whale pushes on, a shadow moving through the deep, driven by a hunger that has been millions of years in the making. Behind it, the water closes over, and the krill that were disturbed by its passage begin to reform, a living current that knows no memory of the great body that passed through it. The cycle continues, as it has for eons, a quiet, relentless rhythm of giving and taking. The ocean's silence is never total. Beneath the whale's passage, there is a constant, subtle creak, the sound of countless tiny organisms rubbing against one another, a living static that fills the deep. It is a sound that the whale hears not through ears, but through the bones of its skull, a vibration that travels through the water and into its very being, a signal of life in all its abundance. This acoustic landscape is as real to the whale as any map. It can sense the difference between a patch of empty water and a thicket of krill by the pitch of that static, the density of the clicks and pops. It is a language of the deep, a way of hearing the ocean's wealth that has guided its ancestors for millions of years. The herring, a close cousin of the sardine, speak their own version of this language. They are the silver flash in the bait balls, the fish that pack together into a single, shimmering organism that can stretch for miles. When they gather, they create a cacophony of sound, a chorus of clicks that announces their presence to any predator with the ears to hear it. For a pod of humpback whales, that chorus is a dinner bell. Unlike the solitary blue whale, humpbacks often hunt in groups, working together to corral the herring into an ever tighter mass. They use bubble nets, streams of air released from their blowholes, to create a wall of confusion that contains the fish, a living fence that the panic-stricken school will not cross. The coordination is precise. One whale dives deep, releasing the bubbles in a spiral, while others circle above, hurting the fish with their bodies. The bubble curtain rises, glowing in the dim light, a shimmering cage that draws the herring upward until they are packed into a single, frantic ball. Then the whales rise as one, mouths open, taking in the concentrated mass. It is a different kind of dependence than the blue whales, but it is just as healthy. The humpback has traded the solitary efficiency of the filter feeder for a cooperative intelligence, a hunting strategy that depends on the herring being where they are expected to be, in the numbers that are expected. When the herring follow a different current, the collaboration breaks down and the whales go hungry. The herring themselves are a study in contradiction. They are a prey species, but they are also a force of nature, a living current that can reshape the ocean around them. They move in synchrony, each fish responding to the movement of its neighbor in a matter of milliseconds, creating a wave of silver that ripples through the water with a speed that can confuse even the most practiced predator. This synchrony is their only defense. A single herring is almost helpless, a few inches of silver in a vast blue emptiness. But a school of herring is a superorganism, a body that moves as one, that can change direction in an instant, that creates the illusion of a much larger, more formidable presence. It is a strategy of collective safety, a way of being that turns weakness into strength. The seabirds above the water know this better than anyone. They watch from the air, their eyes scanning the surface for the telltale signs of a school, the dark stain of a bait ball, the frantic splashing of a feeding frenzy. When they see it, they dive, a torrent of wings and beaks piercing the water's surface. each bird targeting a single fish from the swirling mass. It is a feeding frenzy that links the sky to the sea, a moment when the ocean's energy is concentrated and shared. The gannets plunge from 50 feet, their bodies streamlined for impact, their beaks opening at the last moment to snatch a fish that has been momentarily disoriented by the chaos. The terns hover, then drop, their smaller beaks taking what the larger birds miss. Each of these hunters is an expert at taking from the same small stock of silver. They do not compete directly. They have carved out their own niche, their own method of extraction. The whale takes hundreds of thousands of fish in a single lunge. The seabird takes one. The tuna, swift and relentless, takes a few dozen with each pass. But they all share the same foundation. They all depend on the same phenomenon, the gathering of the small into a dense, reachable mass. Without that gathering, without the bait ball, the ocean becomes a place of scarcity, and the hunters are forced to travel farther, dive deeper, and work harder for every mouthful of energy. That shared foundation is what this channel returns to, again and again, the quiet patterns that let life lean on life. If you want to keep seeing these invisible threads, subscribe, because there is always another story that waits just beneath the surface. In the comments, write the word gathering if this image of small things coming together to sustain something larger meant something to you today. The tuna is a master of this desperate arithmetic. It is a warm-blooded fish, a rare gift that allows it to swim faster and longer than its cold-blooded rivals. But that warmth comes at a cost. It requires a staggering amount of energy to maintain, which means it must eat constantly, hunting through the water with a single-minded urgency that leaves no room for rest. It finds its prey by smell, by taste, by the subtle electrical fields that all living things emit. It follows these signals across the ocean, a guided missile of hunger, closing in on the bait ball with a speed that is almost impossible to believe. When it arrives, it charges, a silver blur that slices through the massive fish, taking a mouthful with each pass. The anchovy, the small fish that so often forms the core of these bait balls, is the tuna's bread and butter. It is a creature of the upwellings, a fish that thrives in the cold, nutrient-rich water that rises from the depths. It is abundant, fast reproducing, and almost infinitely replaceable. It is the fuel that powers the tuna's incredible migrations, the coin of the realm in the ocean's vast economy. In 2015, a study published in the ICIS Journal of Marine Science, led by Timothy Essington and his colleagues, described this arrangement with clinical precision. They identified the forage fish as the key energy conduit, the channel through which the power of the plankton is transferred to the upper reaches of the food web. They also noted the management implications. If we want to keep the tuna, we must first protect the anchovy. This is the hidden architecture of the ocean, a system of dependencies that is both beautiful and fragile. It is a web of life, but it is a web with only a few strong threads. And when those threads are severed, the web does not simply sag. It unravels, taking with it the giants that once danced upon it. The herrings speak in the language of silver and sound, and the humpback has learned to listen. But even this remarkable collaboration has its limits. When the herrings shift their spawning grounds, when the water warms beyond their tolerance, the bubble nets rise empty, and the whales must find another way. The dependence is not a choice. It is not a preference that can be traded for another, more convenient arrangement. It is a chain of being, forged over millions of years, that connects the sun's energy to the ocean's largest bodies through a few small silver links. Break any one of those links, and the chain falls. We have seen this happen. In the 20th century, the Pacific sardine fishery collapsed, and the effects rippled far beyond the boats that once hauled them in. The seabirds that fed on the sardines saw their chicks starve. The tuna that followed the sardine schools found empty water, and the ecosystem, stripped of its central pillar, staggered under the weight of the loss. It is easy to look at the ocean and see only the great and the glorious, the whale that breaches, the tuna that slices through the water. the gannet that plunges from the sky. But the true strength of the ocean lies in what we cannot see, in the vast, drifting populations of the small that hold it all together. The blue whale does not know that it is the largest animal on Earth. It does not know the numbers that describe its own body, the 100 tons of bone and blubber, the heart that beats 6 times a minute. It only knows the hunger, the cold, the constant search for the next mouthful of krill, and the krill, for their part, know nothing of the whale. They do not know that their billions are consumed each day by a creature 1,000,000 times their size. They do not know that they are the foundation of an entire ecosystem. They simply drift and feed and reproduce, a living current that has been flowing since before the whales first entered the sea. The sun sets over the cold water, and the light fades from gold to gray to a deep, starless blue. The whale rises one last time, a final breath before the long night of feeding. The calf rises beside it, its breath a smaller plume, a younger echo. Together they sink beneath the surface, and the water closes over them without a sound. The krill continue their drift, a shimmer that fades into the darkness. They do not mourn the loss of the billions that were taken today. They do not anticipate the billions that will be taken tomorrow. They simply are, in a way that has nothing to do with memory or worry, a pure and ancient existence that the whale can only mirror, never understand. In the deep, the whale's heart slows. Its blood moves thick and slow through its vast arteries. It is settling into the long, patient work of the night, the endless filtering that will continue until the first gray light of dawn. The calf drifts close, its body pressed against its mother's side, learning the rhythm of this life, the rhythm that will carry it across the ocean for as long as it lives. The ocean does not judge. It does not cheer for the whale or mourn for the krill. It simply is a system of constant exchange, a great and ancient economy of energy that has been running for eons.
And within that system, the largest and the smallest are bound together, not as enemies, but as partners in a dance that will never end. We are, all of us, part of this dance, even when we are far from the sea. The oxygen we breathe, the food we eat, the very rhythm of our days is tied to the health of this blue world.
The blue whale's dependence on the krill is not an anomaly. It is a reminder of our own, a reminder that we, too, are sustained by things we rarely see. The water is cold, and the light is almost gone. The whale has found its feeding ground, a patch of ocean thick with the living shimmer of 1,000,000 krill. It opens its mouth, and the water rushes in, and the great, silent harvest continues. It will feed until the dawn, and then it will feed again and again, a rhythm as old as the ocean itself. And the krill, in their billions, will be taken, and in their billions they will be reborn. A cycle of giving and taking that has no beginning and no end. It is the quiet, relentless engine of the sea. A system so vast and so delicate that it defies the imagination. And it is, in the end, the only thing that holds the blue world together. The whale does not know this. It does not need to know. It swims and it feeds and it migrates, and it is, in its vast and silent way, a part of something far greater than itself. And that, perhaps, is the deepest truth of the ocean, that even the greatest are carried by the smallest, and that the only thing that truly matters is the endless, unbroken flow of life itself.